Hey guys, it's Chris Truitt from the Reluctant Somm. We're really excited about season 3. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening. Just wanted to give another little note that if you like what we're doing and you want to show us some support, reviews, likes, shares, word of mouth, all of these things really help us. We'll also be creating a newsletter this year that focuses on some of our favorite restaurants, favorite wine lists, favorite places to eat, as well as just some really cool people in the industry, as well as some other insights into what's going on in our field of profession. I also wanted to let you know that on that is where we'll be updating everybody on all of our pop-ups and any collaboration events or anything that we're doing. So if you want to keep track of us, that's the best way. Also, if you're not already following us on Instagram, you can follow us at Reluctant Somm on Instagram and keep up with us. Give us likes. Cheers. Let's rock and roll. Cheers. Peter, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
We'll try to not aerate directly in the mic like we have in previous episodes. My bad. I'm happy to have you here. I really appreciate your flexibility getting here. I know that your schedule's probably jam-packed, with things like the Hella Chenin Fest coming, running your own company, launching the Hella Chenin Fest, and all these tariffs and everything that are happening. There's a lot going on in the world, so I really appreciate your flexibility getting in here, and I'm really stoked for Hella Chenin. So anyways, happy to have you here. You've seen a couple of the episodes. You kind of know the rundown. We have you introduce yourself, kind of talk about your path to where you are now, elaborate on where you are now, and then I have some notes written down and stuff for questions.
Awesome, man.
So,
let's do it.
Yeah, let's rock.
Cool. So my name's Peter Andrews. I'm the founder of Culture Wine Company, co-founder of Hella Chenin Wine Fest, and based in San Francisco. I've been in the wine industry my whole career. I started in cooking school, went to Johnson & Wales, and I think one of the things I'm most grateful for with that school is that they had a license to allow underage students to taste wine legally. Oh. So I grew up in a very poor household that did not celebrate wine or drink wine. My dad drank like Milwaukee's Best Ice, the Beast. Yeah. And so I didn't come from a family that was like teaching me about this. So when I went to cooking school, I was offered to do like WSET as an 18-year-old. And it was like, I'm so grateful I actually said yes. Yeah. And so I started just even learning how to pronounce regions in Italy and what specific grapes were and just like how to even become attuned to what wine was. But at that time, I thought I was going to be a chef. So I continued through finishing my culinary degree. I went and lived in a few places on the East Coast and cooked. And then I lived in Italy and was a chef in Friuli in 2009. And that's where I realized I did not want to be a chef long term. Getting paid basically €2 an hour, 6 days a week is not a very good way to earn a living or pay off student debt.
Or retire. Yeah.
So fortunately, Friuli is a very special place in terms of wine. And so that expanded my horizons. And going to Collio one day on my rare day off, we were just like drinking Ribolla Gialla and Friulano and Schioppettino and all these fun varieties that I was just learning about. And I was like, okay, things are shifting in me. And so I came back home, started doing WSET and further, and went back and did a harvest in Piemonte the next year. And that was like the solidifying moment. So 15 years now, nonstop in the wine world.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty surprising to, it's more rare than people might think to meet somebody who at the age of 18 was in the restaurant industry, or at least in the wine industry. And, you were going to cooking school, but you were learning about wine. And so it's fascinating for me to find people that at that age were already kind of like dedicated to the craft that they're in. Johnson & Wales is also too kind of like a very like quintessential school. What made you pick that, or kind of how'd you end up there?
It's good and bad at the same time. My father was quite sick growing up. He got cancer and a lot of other things from like the time I was 7 until 18 when he passed. But in the midst of that, it was either frozen meals for my entire adolescence, or I would learn how to cook. And so that was really the entry to cooking for me. Luckily, my older brother, my late older brother, was a chef, and he was the one who took me under his wing, so to speak, and kind of taught me like the very basics, so I could cook decent food for my dad and I every night growing up. And then that was like the wholesome side of it. But the other side of it was I've always been really anti standardized tests and like this kind of the SATs and just like the whole presence of those things in our environment. And so I was like, I'm not going to do that. I can get to cooking school without taking any of these tests. And so I had this really stubborn approach to it. So like, I'm very grateful that I had that experience, because the pivot from cooking to wine has been so meaningful and special, but it kind of came out of necessity, out of being quite stubborn. Sure. And then luckily having a brother who was a chef who said like, it's either CIA or Johnson & Wales. Yeah. And that those are really the only two options. Yeah. So I got quite lucky. He was there looking out.
That's awesome. And I love the fact that they had an ability for you to learn about wine. I think it's something that's really cool, and it's something that I wish that there was more of, obviously. But even here at San Francisco City College, they have like a basic wine appreciation course, and I always thought that's cool. If you live in San Francisco, you can take classes for free, and anybody could take that class, which I always thought was like, that's going to be it's going to help kind of burgeon our industry, but it's not the case. At least the last year or so. That's amazing. And, kudos to you for kind of like stepping up to the plate and learning to cook and really kind of growing into that. My dad was a big cooker and liked to teach me, and I was very much like drag my feet into it. I was like, okay, Dad, fine, I'll learn. And then I was 18 living on my own, and I could cook for myself. Yeah. And I was like, well, I guess I'm happy he taught me something,
Yeah. I mean, it's the most like useful thing you could possibly be taught. Like, I spent money on a culinary degree, but that I don't necessarily use professionally, but like we cook all the time. Yeah. And whenever we have friends over or I go to visit my in-laws, it's like I'm cooking. Yeah. And I think like I can't think of a way to express my love for my friends or family more than like spending time in the kitchen. So I'm so glad I have that background, and it's my number one way of showing love is through food.
That's really well said, because that's kind of I think that's kind of this universal language of a lot of people in the culinary industry is like, the people in the front of house love the acts of service and love the hospitality side of things. And sometimes the people in the back of the house can be like a little bit more closed off, a little less kind of like warm and friendly. But the act of cooking for people is just such a like loving act of service in its own way. Totally. that it's so beautiful to see. So then bring us up through today. I mean, you mentioned you had been a buyer for a long time, and kind of where did you spend a lot of those years?
So basically after the harvest in Italy in 2010, that there was a moment during that harvest where I said, okay, this is firmly like my career. And that was at Cascina Iuli in Monferrato in Asti. And so I was like Barbera focused producer. So I came home and was like, okay, I'm all in. And now what do I do? Do I do an MBA? Do I do the diploma? And luckily I had a mentor, an old department chair from Johnson & Wales, who kind of coached me through it and said, you absolutely should do an MBA no matter what, and then do your diploma, which I'm very grateful for, because I think a lot of the times in the wine industry and the food industry in particular, and I definitely would have gone down this path of like, I think passion will bring you only so far, but having like some general understanding of like business sense, finance, running books, things like that, that may not be something that a wine professional is taught. And so I'm like eternally grateful that I did this, because now, 15 years on, I was able to start this business and run it from like very sound bookkeeping up to like logistics and the general day to day. So I did the diploma, but first I went back to Providence, Rhode Island, where I was living, and I opened up a wine store called Grapes and Grains. I was hired right out of grad school to open it for a silent owner in the last dry town in the state. Wow. So it took a couple of years to like actually get the license and go through that whole process. But we opened up like a hand sell bottle store. That was the goal. I was like 22, given a blueprint and a budget and a date that we needed to be open by. And I was tasting an absurd amount of wine, beer, spirits. I did all the buying. And I actually had this moment in it where I remember going to a big distributor, and we had an appointment set up, never met face to face, but it was like, come to taste our book and tell us what you would like. And I walked in and I saw all the old guard like look at me and be like, are you effing kidding? Like this 22-year-old.
Did you ID that guy?
Yeah. And the energy was like palpably uncomfortable and awkward. And they were just like, how this kid doesn't have any idea. And I had this chip on my shoulder like the rest of the time since. And The store ended up winning like best wine shop Rhode Island a couple of years in a row, and but the diploma was always in my crosshairs. And at the time, it was only offered in Boston, New York, SF, and Philly, I think. And Boston was, I wanted to get out of New England. New York, it was between New York and SF. And for me, if I lived in New York, I don't know if I'd ever sleep. I would just like, I'd be an animal. Yeah. So SF always felt like fit my energy, even though I'm originally from the Southeast. And so, yeah, I moved here in 2014, and like, it's within 2 weeks of living here, I was like, this is home for life. Like, I've never even considered living anywhere else again.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I worked at this amazing wine shop and restaurant called Prima for 6 years in Walnut Creek. Did buying with their owner, John Rittmaster, who's like a big mentor and like just confidant. Super, super smart dude. Knows wine better than mostly anyone I've ever worked with. And then moved to Vinfolio for a few years and worked my way up to vice president of sales and operations, which was a incredibly challenging but like good bit of experience. And then after leaving there, that's where culture came into the picture.
And so culture has been around for
a year and a half.
Wow.
It's very new. Yeah.
Well, it's a tough time to get in, but I have hope.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I think for me, like I visited South Africa in January of 23, and that was the inspiration for culture.
Wow.
The goal was, I was burnt out at an extreme level from a stressful job, a tough work environment, post-COVID, all the things, right? Like, just like I think a lot of restaurant people are feeling still today is like, I just need a break to reset. I had a forced break in a way because after a merger, my position was cut. And I'm grateful for that because I wanted out anyway. And it brought me to South Africa. And while I was there, my wife and I just kept kind of like having these moments like, are you like feeling this right now? Like, this wine is insane. The people are so nice. Community is very real. There's very much like, you're into this? Oh, we see you're in, let's go over here. Let's show you this. Let's show you that. Hey, meet my friends. And like, that type of energy was the complete antithesis of the fine wine world I was working in. And
especially when you walked in that room at 22.
Definitely. Yeah. And I just feel like why I got into wine in the first place, I went back to Friuli. I went back to like this openness and this like curiosity that wine brought me. And this like, what it turned into was like championing varieties and regions people just weren't paying attention to. You know, Bordeaux and Burgundy, they're great. I'd drink them if I wasn't paying, but they get enough notoriety. But why didn't South Africa have notoriety, especially given the wines I was experiencing on this trip? So that was really like a lot of introspection about why I even got into wine, what I want to do with it. I considered getting into coffee and just doing a full pivot. And South Africa just hooked me. I was like, this is it, man. This is where I want to focus. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love to see kind of the evolution that's happening in the distributor market in the last couple of years, right? There's a lot more smaller books kind of coming out. There's a lot of people like staking their claim, and there's a lot more kind of specialized places. You know, you have Friuli Wines, which obviously, as the name would imply, is dedicated to exclusively Friulian wines.
Awesome book.
Yeah. And then you have, a lot of other people that are really dedicated to, either natural or biodynamic and all of these things. And it's really, really cool for me to see that. And South Africa is something that, I was selling South African wines 12 years ago, 14 years ago, and I love them, but it was a hard sell. But I think, the tariffs are going to make things a little bit different now. But I think that, the quality that you're getting for the cost has always been significantly different. I mean, my day job, we sell Neil Ellis. You take out Neil Ellis Stellenbosch Cab for $20 a bottle and you pour it next to a Napa Cab, and it's equal quality and it's half the cost, right? And for better or for worse for the region, it doesn't have the recognition yet, or it's growing more and more, I guess. But there's a lot of opportunity. Yeah,
I think that's one of the things I thought about quite a bit in terms of like when I was writing the business plan and thinking about like what is right for South Africa? What is South Africa like deserving of? What have they been not receiving in terms of marketing for a long time? And I think the quality to price is like through the roof. But I also, that's not necessarily the talking points that I bring in because I feel like once you position something as value, it's really hard to break out of that like bottom shelf mindset.
Yeah.
And I just feel like the quality of the country has gone so much higher in the last 30 years since apartheid ended, that it's deserving of a different viewpoint. And so for me, like if you look at my website, my Instagram, even sales meetings, I never use the term value. And I think people are going to make the judgment on their own, right? Like it is good value. And I think in today's time where like, you know, with these tariffs, like a recession has become much more likely. People are more conscious about what they're spending and how they're spending it.
Certainly.
But I think that for me, it's talking about the people, the place, the fact that there's like real true site specificity across all the regions now. And that's kind of where I focus. And then if someone in the trade or the consumer level says, hey, this is good value, it's like, yeah, sure. But for me to kind of go out of the gates with that, I think that can actually hurt the ability for it to go into the places I think it deserves. So with these Scions of Sinai wines, for example, like some of these are on tasting menus like Michelin star restaurants, right? And if I had jumped out of the gate by saying like, cool, these are great value, I don't know if they would ever have been looked at as good enough for those places. You know, and so that's been like the thing for me that from day one is like, how do you navigate that conversation and how do you like talk about these wines from the perspective that I think they're worth? But I agree with you. Like Neil Ellis cab at $20. I drank the Neil Ellis Shard the other day at a WOSA event. It's like delicious from Elgin. It's like it's the wines just hit. It's incredible.
And this, I mean, particularly the Chenin Blanc, the thing that we're drinking. So the sparkling is great. I'd love for you to elaborate on that. But the Chenin that we're drinking right now is so cool too. I mean, it has this like really, really incredible quality. I mean, it's like, when you smell it, it has a little bit of productivity. It has like, you know, it has some great character going on without it being like, I feel like I remember South African Chenin Blanc being like a lot more kind of floral and very like, I wouldn't say flabby, but so giving. And this has so much minerality and kind of terroir to it that I think echoes what you were saying earlier, where there's a lot more kind of site specificity between the wines.
Yeah. So I think I am willing to get into the boxing ring with California and Loire producers. That I think South Africa is making the best Chenin on the planet right now. Obviously, like a chalky, schisty Chenin from Loire, just there's nothing like it. But I think the diversity you're finding in South Africa is unparalleled.
Right.
First off, there's more of it planted than the rest of the world combined in South Africa.
Wow.
So because of that, just by extension, there's a lot of diversity. It's been there for a long time. It originally got there really for bulk wines. And, you know, we were talking about Steen or Stien, as I say. They used to think until like the 1960s that it was its own variety. That was almost like Riesling in some way. So it was called Stien, and which means stone in Afrikaans. But once they realized it was Chenin Blanc, no one really calls it Stien anymore. But to your point about kind of minerality and for me, it's a textural wine. It's a very like almost salty wine in a sense as well. Like the variety, I mean, I'd say even better than Chardonnay shows its site. I think Chardonnay, you can do so much in the cellar to kind of make it taste Burgundian, for example, Lees, Batonage, whatever.
Handles oak a little bit easier.
Yeah. Whereas like Chenin, I think it's quite a like blank canvas in that sense. So Scions of Sinai, this is made by Bernard Burdell, a 7th generation grape grower in Stellenbosch. This vineyard was planted by his family in 78. And so he only does these old dry farmed, regenerative farming bush vines. He's about 2 miles from the ocean. So the waters in South Africa are cooler than ours. There's a ton of upwelling and a ton of wind that blows off of the water on a every day. Pretty much 2:33 p.m. growing season, the wind starts to kick up, and that like rolls right into the evening, and so he's big drop. So because he's this sandy soil, cooler climate area, you have a more cooler style of Chenin. So it's more like the green fruit style. But because it's these old bush vines, he's getting like 2 tons an acre. And so you're getting like ultra concentration. And that happens with bush vines anyway, because they're not high yielding pruning method. So I think you're seeing a lot of producers that are like realizing like how to farm these old bush vines better. And we can talk about like what what that even means, why they even exist in South Africa, these bush vines, because it's a very prominent growing method. But I think there's been a lot of learnings around how to take care of them in a much better way, how to dry farm them and prune them in a way that you can keep them for decades. So this vineyard is showing no signs of slowing down. I think this vineyard could be a 70, 80, 100-year-old vineyard in time. And so because of that, you're able to get these really interesting characteristics that are super specific to where it's grown. And I think that's just, to me, like, so exciting. Like, I know you work for the Sorting Table full time, and like I think of their Burgundy book, right? And like I think of Martine Saunier, and I think of Becky Wasserman, and the old days of Kermit before like all his Burgundy producers went to other books. And I look at mine and I'm like, I hope one day that I can have enough Chenin and Syrah, but especially Chenin, where it comes from every region, every soil type, and gives you like this breadth and depth, like you have a Burgundy. And it can do that 100%. Yeah.
There's so much to unpack, and I'd obviously really love to deep dive into kind of like the bush vine thing, and especially the dry farming. But I guess the big question that I have before we get into that is just like, do you think that the evolution of the winemaking practice has been kind of a hand-in-hand effect of a focus on quality over quantity?
Definitely, 100%. Okay. So, for example, Chenin year on year for a long period of time has been losing acreage in South Africa because what's happening is there's a couple of things. The bulk side of things is slowing down, and there's less need for like these overcrop 20 tons an acre Chenins. On the other hand, in South Africa, there's a lot of vineyard land that's getting ripped up in general that could actually be some of these old vines that could make great wine, or they could be bulk, because the Asian market in particular is buying citrus and orchard fruits from South Africa at like a very high premium. So they're making more money per ton on apples and oranges than they are on grapes, even though it's significantly harder to farm grapes, right? So that's a big challenge. And so there's been the producers that are farming in a way where you would make wine like Bernard's. You can only do that if you're making enough money, obviously, to make it worth it. And so that's kind of where I come in and say, like, cool, these wines deserve a better chance than the value, and that's how you keep those vines in the ground. Way before I came along with that, there's been many people who have had that same idea, and I think one of the coolest things is this thing here. It's called the Certified Heritage Vineyard. It's through the Old Vine Project. And this viticulturist, Rosa Kruger, who I'm like just totally enamored with. She's such a like powerhouse, badass, no nonsense, like she'll put you in your place. She put me in my place our first meeting. It was great. I really appreciate her so much. And like, she started the Old Vine Project in a way, basically the premise is if you work with a vineyard that's over 35 years old and you take care to farm it sustainably from a human perspective to a general environmental perspective, you can then apply for certification. In this case, this vineyard was planted in 78. You have to use 85% of the fruit from the old vines, meaning you can replant in an effort to keep it old vine forever. And then once you're certified, you have access to her knowledge. She'll come to the vineyard and work with you.
That's awesome.
You pay for this little sticker, but then theoretically, people like me and then you and then other sommeliers and buyers will say, hey, this sticker is actually incredibly meaningful because it's keeping these old vines in the ground. It's getting the farmers paid enough to keep them in the ground, and it's buoying the quality of South African wine. So there's initiatives like this that are so impactful. Rosa takes it a step further in such an important way, where a majority of the money she gets goes back into a school that she runs that's only for Black farmers.
Wow.
And so the premise there is that the majority of the workforce in South Africa are Black laborers. And so to help just give more ability to have any upward mobility or do the job better and get paid better within that job, schools like this are critical.
Right.
So she's like, just this initiative, this little sticker is like doing all the work. Right. And that's like, it's stuff like this that's happening in even more places. That's like, you're seeing all those things cumulatively add up to like quality taking this really compounded effect jump high.
And is she governmentally restricted, or is it just kind of like a trademarked sticker that she has? I mean, how does she protect that nobody no bulk producer just slaps a sticker just like that on their bottle?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's a couple of things. I mean, I guess someone could counterfeit if they were not cool.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't think that's so much of an issue because I think the industry is so behind her that they would call it out. But there's a couple of ways in which she can prove that it is in fact when it was planted. Mm-hmm. So in 1918, the KWV took monopolistic control of the wine industry in South Africa. Basically, phylloxera hit South Africa super late. Everyone else was rebounding. South Africa was getting crushed. The industry at that time anyway was not doing great. And the government said, if we want this to be run by one organization, and we don't want that to be us.
Right.
And so the KWV had full rights from 1918 to 98. Right. Every decision that was made was done by them.
There's only like 2 wineries for a really long time, right?
Yeah. And it's all kind of co-op based, right? So if you had a piece of land in Stellenbosch, they would tell you what to plant, what clones to plant, what yield to give, what you would get paid on that yield. Wow. If you made the wine, where it would sell. Yeah. And eventually people started defecting. Like in the 60s, you saw defections, which is how eventually it crumbled. But the 2 unintended benefits are, everything planted from 1918 onward is on record. There's no country in the world that knows every vineyard planted that long. So Rosa can dig into the records and say, oh yeah, it was actually planted in this date. That's amazing. And that's where this is so impactful. The other unintended benefit is there are some vineyards planted around that time that were actually the perfect clone in the right place and are now producing fruit still in these 60, 70, 80-year-old vines. And you're able to like tap into that, right? And so the question is, how do you get farmers paid enough to keep those vines in the ground? Because the more you support that particular layer, the greater the quality will be and the more we can grow South Africa in this level. So that's kind of where I'm focusing. I see this sticker and I get like really excited, whether it's my producer or someone else. I'm like, let's dive into this. There's a story there.
I have another sticker that I want to talk to you about later. And it's cool because I like that. You know, when you see Spanish wines and they have Spanish stickers on the back that are like, they're appellation stickers or something like that. I really like that. But the whole concept of having something like this is, Tegan Pasalakwa and Morgan Twain Peterson are like working on this like old, and there's somebody else I'm forgetting, so I apologize to the third person, but there's the 3 guys that are really dedicated to this old vine movement and like kind of documenting, regulating, and saving these old vineyards. And it'd be great if somebody could have something similar to that in California and America. But yeah, I guess you're right. There's probably so little documentation on kind of when the vineyards were planted that.
Yeah, so Tegan and Morgan's work is through the Historic Vineyard Society. And then there's Alder Yarrow, who has vinography, and he's part of the Old Vine Conference, or our Old Vines. Got it. And that's the Old Vine Registry. Okay. And they're all kind of doing similar work. So for example, I actually registered Bernard's Vineyards on Alder's, the site that he's working on, awesome. The registry he has that's actually based out of the UK. I would love to see a world where like Tegan and Morgan's project teams up with Alder's project in the UK, teams up with Rosa's project, and there's one kind of general consensus of like how to do it. But in the end, what Rosa's doing is she's kind of on her own journey at the moment. But I've been following what Tegan and Morgan are doing, and it's like a very similar thing. Right. It's rooted in history. I called my company Culture Wine because like wine is culture. Yeah. When I lived in Italy, I was amazed by how ingrained it is in life. And when you think about California history and these old vines, like these vineyards are absolutely a part of history, especially some of the ones like around the gold rush era. Yep. Right. These like cuttings and these like the old blacks.
Everything's immigrant planted. Yeah, exactly.
And so it's a really, to me, that's like anytime I teach a wine class, whether I'm teaching diploma or just consumers at home, I always start with the history because that's like that's the meat of it all. So that, I love what they're all doing. It's such a cool, to me, I don't know, maybe I'm a nerd, but I just am fascinated by that stuff.
I think we're all nerds. Yeah. Anybody that's listening to this is probably a nerd in a way. True. And then the red is Pinotage. That's the one that you were telling me about.
Yeah. Let's get that in your glass. Oh man, this is cool. I had a journalist today. Obviously today is like bloody Thursday in terms of these damn tariffs. But I had a journalist that I respect big time from Jancis Robinson, actually. I sent her a sample of this and she wrote today like, hey, I'm going to put this in the wines of the week. This was hands down the best Pinotage I've ever tasted. And that was like made my day in such a significant way given the circumstances of these tariffs, because I think that this Pinotage from Bernard at Science of Sinai, this is the Phoenix single vineyard planted in 76. This is what pushed me over the edge to start the company. He makes this, and he makes Atlanticus, which is a blend of this vineyard and a younger one. That's all stainless. This is a little more structured with some old barrel. But I think Pinotage is a variety that's so wildly misunderstood. When you read the books on WSET or CMS or whatever, it's like negative. It could be this, right?
You might win the lottery and get one good one out of every 100 you drink.
Yeah, it's like it really does not paint it in a good picture, which is why I had been teaching WSET prior to starting this company. But once I started it, I was like, if I teach it again with the time I have, I want it to solely be South Africa so we can focus on this, because this is what's happening versus what it used to be, which is, I think, still part of the curriculum. And of course, some of the oaky styles are still there, but in the end, it's a variety that's a cross between Pinot Noir and Cinsault. It's created in 1924. The seeds were planted, first vines in 1925. First commercial vintage was until 1959. And I think for the rest of the 20th century, it was just, what do you do with this?
Yeah.
Pinot Noir is obviously, I think any Pinot Noir grower would probably say it's the most challenging grape to grow and to make wine with. Cinsault is this big old berries, a lot of fleshiness. It wants to give you a shitload of crop. It takes a lot of skill to grow too. And I also think Cinsault in particular really is best with old vines. So you kind of need that. You just need time as well. So I kind of feel like Pinotage is finally coming of age with younger producers who are going, hey, let's farm it a little bit more like on the lower yield side in these cooler climates with these bush vines. And let's make it with like native yeast, hands-off approach, lower alcohol, no new oak kind of vibe. And you're able to kind of do this. The variety, I think, when you read the negatives, it's not an inherent grape negative that you read. When you read issues like
it's an élevage negative, right?
It's how the wine is made, right? It's a very high amino acid nutrient variety, so it wants to ferment very fast. If you let it go and you want it to ferment fast, you could get this thing to dryness in 2 days. It's like insane.
That's wild.
It's insane. So if you let that happen, then mercaptans come out and all these like off aromas. So that's like step one, right? So you control that. Then it wants to just like the way that the acid structures change in fermentation and post fermentation. What can happen during malolactic, without going like too into like the weeds there, but essentially all of the negatives we read about Pinotage over the years have been in winemaking issues, winemaking errors. I think more so learning how to make wine with a brand new variety. It's 100 years old this year.
Yeah.
So I think now people are realizing how to kind of temper that and make wine like this, where you get this like Burgundian, rose petal, shisha, red cherry, but then you get the little bitterness and kind of rustic of Cinsault. And if you get both of those things together, it's like a pretty magical experience.
Right.
And so I think that this is this wine's what pushed me over the edge, because like to me, South Africa has changed so much for the better. It's grown so much. It's come of age so much. And like, I can't think of a wine that expresses that more than Bernard's Pinotage. This Science of Sinai is like next level for me.
The wine's insane. I mean, and the thing is, I can't even tell you the last time that I had a Pinotage. The one that sticks out to me the most would have been Passages. And I haven't had Passages in a decade, and I'm pretty sure there was a lot more oak. It was a lot bigger wine. It was like very dense, kind of chocolate cakey kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And it definitely didn't have the kind of expressiveness that this has. This is so cool. It reminds me of like, I guess it reminds me of Cinsault without using that as a cop-out, but it's really cool. It has so much going on and so much character, and the tannin profile is still very like subtle, right? It's not, it doesn't drink like it smells. It smells like it's going to be like, a little heavier than it is on the palate. So I don't know. It's a cool one.
Yeah, dude. It's like a fleshy version of Pinot, or excuse me, of Cinsault. Yeah. It's like, because he makes a Cinsault as well. I love to have this next to the Cinsault, because then you can start to dissect what Pinotage is.
Yeah.
But I think that there's like a strawberry character in Cinsault. There's this like wild berry thing, blackberry, but like like more brambly than that. And there's like a viney, resiny, stemmy kind of thing in Cinsault too. And part of that comes from some actual whole cluster, but in general, there is something in the grape inherently too. I taste that across Cinsault from any country. But I think when you add like the Pinot Noir in this cross, that gives you that like sexy texture that kind of rounds that out and gives you all the things you want. But in the end, it's a low tannin, not super acidic. Yeah, it's like a very elegant, refined wine. It's been really fun to like, I imported like 10 cases of this. I wish that more was made, but Bernard made 2,000 bottles.
Wow.
This is one where I hope as time draws on, I can basically take all of this from Bernard and import it. 'Cause I just think it has so much potential to just kind of shift perspectives of what the grape can do.
Yeah, it reminds me of like Cayano, or it reminds me of like a Raya Spicious Red. Like it has this like really cool kind of like minerality to it with like this really wonderful like aromatic profile while still being so soft on the palate at the same time. And it's really cool to taste something like this. Thank you for bringing it.
It's a good comparison because this is from the coast. It's cool climate. And obviously Raya Spicious is this like, it's much wetter in Raya Spicious, but like there is a similarity in terms of the climate. And there's also, I think Raya Spicious, like the reds are usually grown in the more granite soils up there. This is entirely decomposed granite.
Right.
So you're getting, you're in the right path entirely.
So cool. What a cool wine.
Yeah.
And then on the sparkling, I mean, that we had earlier, if you want to just kind of highlight that, I think it's, let's close the loop on Pinotage. I have one question for you. As a wine educator, I think it's worth pointing out. I read this forever ago in 2009 when I got my first wine book. And I never did more research beyond that. But Pinotage, the name is because they thought they were crossing it with Syrah, but they were accidentally crossing it with Cinsault?
No, I think it was always, as far as I know, it's always been Cinsault. But the thing is they called it Hermitage back then.
Got it.
And then when the crayfish agreement came out, which basically the French, only like 10 years later, there was a big agreement with the French to sell more seafood from South Africa to Europe. And the trade-off was you can't use any of the French terms. Even like domain and chateau weren't really like those were not in the agreement as like you can't use them, but it was like please don't use them as well. So Hermitage was a quick get that out of here.
Got it.
And so they cross Pinot Noir, Hermitage, Pinotage.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I was always under the impression that they thought that they were crossing cuttings from Hermitage that was Syrah with Pinot Noir, and then later on through genetic testing, they thought it was Cinsault. So
it's very possible. These things are always so interesting. This is what's so fun about history. But Syrah in South Africa actually came from Australia. So basically there was a lot of trade that was happening. And so after Syrah landed in Australia, it then came, because all cuttings, like a lot of the cuttings or all cuttings or something like that in Australia were coming from South Africa.
Wow.
And so, because it was a stop in the Cape on the way to Perth. And so eventually Shiraz came back to South Africa, which is why most South Africans call Syrah Shiraz.
Wow.
Even though the style is much more Rhone in this Syrah-like. So it's kind of flipping the whole like Shiraz is always full, Syrah is always light, thing on its head.
Yeah.
But that's the origin of the variety there.
That's awesome. Super cool. And so then I guess let's move into the sparkling now. The sparkling was really awesome. And I mean, I guess I was expecting it to be Chenin Blanc sparkling because it, Hella Chenin, but you said it's Pinot and Chard?
Yeah, man. So in South Africa, the legal term for traditional method sparkling wine or champagne method is Cap Classique.
Cap Classique.
It was Cap Savankel from like 70s to like the 90s, but I think they smartly made it a simpler thing for people to understand. So, Cap. So the legal kind of defining characteristics of Cap Classique are that it has to be 12 months on the lees, but it can come from any variety, any region. But like 80% or something, 90% of it's coming from Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinotage, and Chenin Blanc.
Cool.
Although the great majority is Chardonnay, Pinot Noir.
Sure.
So in this case of the Van Hunks, this is 70 Chard, 30 Pinot. It ages 8 months in concrete eggs before second ferment, 36 months in the bottle after second ferment, and then like a 6 gram dosage. So that's like a pretty standard thing. I think one of the beauties of Cap Classique in South Africa, like I import 3 now. One of the kind of beautiful things about it is the great majority of them age far beyond the 12-month minimum. So this is 36 months. Genevieve I have is 48 months. The Peter Ferreira that I'm like just getting on a boat now is like 5 years plus.
Wow.
And these wines are like this Van Hunk's 3 years is $29. So I think you find some like pretty exceptional aging of these wines, and Cap Classique to me like could absolutely. I've been really looking at Cremant and Cava a lot lately, and finding myself really underwhelmed with a lot of what I taste. And I think if I put this against a lot of those wines, I'd be much happier if I ordered that. And I think I'm starting to see that more. A lot of the more savvy wine bars and restaurants are putting this in place of those wines.
Yeah. Yeah. I think without getting into Corpinat and Franciacorta, right? And Franciacorta's great, but the cost is doubled in the last 10 years for a lot of the producers. You know, it's not really a bargain buy anymore.
Yeah.
And it's not really BTGable in most cases. And if it's not BTGable, it's hard to move some volume on it. So, it's awesome. It's
important. It's very important to have that price tiering. So yeah, the Van Hunk's name is funny because in Cape Town, there's Table Mountain. It's like a 3,000 foot high flat granite mountain, and you can hike it in a day, but there's literally no easy way up. So you're going to go visit one day. I'll literally help you write, or any of your listeners will like help you write the itinerary. Yeah. So please like reach out when it's time. On my website, I literally have like safari tips and places to eat, drink, and stay in South Africa. Cause I want people to like have a good trip, but there's not an easy way up. That you will do a hike and some South African will be like, dude, this is the way up. It will kick your ass. But when you get to the top, the way that Cape Town is kind of angled southwest. And so the backside of Table Mountain is facing, that's where Constantia is, the first ever vineyards in South Africa. And that's facing False Bay. So these vicious cold winds just beat up against this mountain, but the weather gets trapped because it's high enough. And then the fog typically sits just right on top of Table Mountain. And so they call the fog the tablecloth.
The tablecloth.
And so the kind of folklore is that Jan Van Hunks went on top of Table Mountain, met the devil, because there's Devil's Peak on the side of it.
Got it.
The devil challenged him to a pipe smoking competition. And the resulting smoke is what created the tablecloth.
I see.
So it's this kind of folklore. And I think the premise is like, it's meant to be light and playful and but good wine. Yeah. So that's a fun thing.
I love that. That's fun. Let's dive into kind of the misery, as it were, kind of the yesterday's announcements. Let me get this into your glass also too, if you don't mind. It's a white, so I don't know if you have.
I do a little dump. I'll just drink it.
Perfect.
Here, let's do it. Let's do that.
So, you know, I think we'd be remiss to not talk about it, and this will air in about a week, and so I think we'd be remiss to not talk about kind of the gotta take your jacket off. He's ready. Here we go. Here we go, folks.
Oy vey.
We'd be remiss to not talk about kind of what's happening, I guess why it's happening so significantly to South Africa, and you know how the reactions have been. I mean, it's hard to say like what's your pivot plan right now, but you know, how do you kind of envision it playing out, I guess?
Yeah, I think yesterday was such an interesting day. It's one of those ones I'll probably never forget in terms of like just my career and like what culture's story is. I was at Burdell showing wine to Jeff, and he had literally, as I was walking into the door, the announcement that he won Best Restaurant in America, right? And I was like, dude, amazing. Congrats. This is so amazing. Yeah. And so we have a good tasting. He buys the Van Hunks and he puts another Syrah that I work on from Brookdale on the list. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like these wines are on the Best Restaurant in America's wine list. This is like milestone moment. And I respect Jeff and all he's doing like so much. And it's just high, right? I'm like, cool, I'm done for the day. I'm going to go I'm going to go celebrate this win. And then I walk out and the first thing I see on my phone is tariffs announced. Yeah. And everything that I had been seeing was South Africa was largely going to like not be impacted on a heavy scale.
Right.
And so for me,
it was all 200 on the EU.
Yeah, everything was focused.
We were all scared of.
Well,
you know?
My freight broker even said like, South Africa's not even on this list. Yeah. Like cause I have a container sitting at port and we'll talk about that. So my expectation was something reasonable, not the highest of all wine producing countries.
Yeah.
So it was like this kind of the stages of grief, because I was driving from Oakland back to my house in SF, and I was like kind of shock, and then angry, and then sad, and then like, you know, back to angry, and then okay, we have to fix this. We have to figure out what to do. And so I just did not go too deep into like the personal side of it. I basically connected with all my producers and said like, okay, this is what's happened. And these are the three things I think we can do. Because again, I have a container that's been at port for a week in Cape Town that I've been waiting to get on the water. It's been delayed because they have those intense winds.
Yep.
And so we're supposed to leave on the 4th, which might have avoided me even being tariffed. This morning, it was said it will be going on the 5th, which means it will be tariffed, but 10% versus 30%. So long story short, me and the producers are kind of all talking about it. Like, okay, these are the options. And one is you pull a container and you just wait.
Yeah.
Which none of us wanted to do. The other is you push through and you figure out what tariffs are going to be, and you get it here and you deal with it. And as a small like fledgling business, to like imagine ponying up $30,000+ on my biggest ever order just to this regime was really unpalatable. And so I think in the end we were all talking about like what this looks like moving forward. And I think the conversations were really they were inspiring actually in all of this. They were really like affirming to me as to like that this is the right business and the right place to be, because every single producer I worked with said, we're gonna work with you. Yeah. We're gonna figure out how to make this work where we can meet in the middle on tariffs, which I think most good relationships with importers, that's what's happening on the other side. And it was not even a question for them. And I think that shows me that I'm working with the right people. They believe in what we're doing and what the potential is here. And they believe in me enough to say, we're going to like take a hit on our livelihood because of your dumb precedent. And it was actually incredibly comforting because I feel like, okay, I have the right, I believe in my book entirely. I now believe in the people 10 times more. I didn't know I could believe in them more than I did. And we have a plan to move forward. And I think in some ways, South Africa is, you know, will 30% stay forever? I hope not. Is it possible? Certainly. I suspect we'll end up with something that's more long-term, closer to 10 to 15. Right. It's only just me just guessing. Yeah. I think these wines have always been worth more than what they're landing on the shelf at anyway. And so now the question is, will the market absorb that? Because they're inevitably going to have to go up. But, you know, it's not like I'm the only one dealing with this. The entire wine industry is. And the question for me is, on a bigger picture, is like, what is the appetite for wine overall for consumers to drink wine? Like, where is the threshold of price? And so for me, that's the big question, and that we'll only see with time. I think with tariffs, it's proven time and again that they're a tax on the people and nothing else. They're hurting farmers that I work with, and farmers you guys work with, and farmers everybody works with around the world. And they're the ones that always seem to take the brunt of this, who have the lowest margins anyway, often working at like a break even or loss. And yeah, I feel for those, that layer so much. And I hope that like wine, we can figure out a way in the wine industry to make it more attractive to be a part of it again. And this is like a whole nother section, but I just feel like wine has become like, what's more natural than the other? You know, is this like a Baltic red, or is this like cool natural wine? I won't drink this, whatever. And I think we have to kind of like take a step back now. Maybe we're being forced into this to be like, we should just invite everyone into wine. Be a part of this. And I think this is probably going to be like a 5-alarm wake up call for us as an industry to create environments where people can drink what they want to drink without some like barrier being up in front of them. And I think that's the thing we all need to kind of like come back to, I think, right now to support like everyone in the industry.
I mean, I can't agree with you more in that regard. And I think that, you know, we all have to be willing to kind of like step out, have the conversation, get uncomfortable, start talking about wine with other people at different levels of knowledge and broadening our circles and sharing our love for wine. Bianca and I do this great community tasting. We try to do once a month. It's free. Anybody that can come.
Cool.
And we get sample bottles from different people and we just pour stuff and talk to people and just kind of like make wine approachable. Some people come up and ask highly in-depth questions, and other people come up and go like, I don't know how to swirl a glass. Can you teach me how to swirl a glass? And I'm like, fuck yeah, I can teach you.
That's the best.
That's awesome. That's exactly what we want. And I'm with you. Like, if we're not doing more to kind of bring more people in, it's going to be harder. And, a big thing that we talk about a lot, and I think could really go towards, all of the families that you represent, and a lot of the families that we represent as well, is like conscious consumption. Know where your money is going. Would you rather drink 2 bottles of Apothic, or would you rather drink 1 bottle of something that's actually family owned and operated and has, an amazing family behind it, where people are working hard and taking care of the vineyards, right? And without poo-pooing Apothic, like if that's what you have and that's what you have access to, do it. My grandma lives in Joshua Tree, and like that's all that she can get access to is, Safeway stuff. And she drinks what she drinks, and that's good. That's better than nothing.
It's an on-ramp.
Exactly.
I think that's the key that we're missing right now, is we're like destroying every on-ramp right now to wine. Yeah. We have to like end that and build like 10 times more on-ramps that ever existed. Yeah. That's the key right now. Yeah. And that's the only way we survive this. And I think, maybe that's what will force us into it, is realizing like, okay, cool, break down the barriers, stop talking about like these things that are making even more boxes for consumers to have to jump into or get out of. Yeah. And just like if you drink Apothic, fuck yeah, drink 10 glasses of it.
Do it.
Awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we'll figure out, okay, what is it exactly that you love about it? And now we'll start like guiding your journey. That's like our job as wine professionals, is to guide the journey of like, what is your wine journey, and like understand what people's like curiosity levels are, what is like the limit of their curiosity, and then like nurture that, not judge it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's so funny. I work for the Sorting Table now. I used to work for Chambers, sold some amazing wine. I've sold some of the best wines in the world, what many people would say is some of the best wines in the world.
Yeah. Chambers is a great book.
But I would always joke because, I'd work alongside all these amazing colleagues, and I would say like, somebody would shit on Barefoot, and I'm like, Barefoot's a gateway wine. That's like that. I used to sell thousands of cases of Barefoot a year in Galveston, Texas, right? That's the wine that I would put into a shop. I would build confidence with the buyer and build confidence with their consumers. And then we would start introducing something like Starborough, right? And then we started introducing like things that were a little bit more expensive, but we needed that gateway wine to kind of really kind of get to the point where we could introduce something else, you know? So,
totally.
Yeah.
I think it comes with time. I mean, I think I was listening to your and Adam's chat podcast a few episodes ago, and like there was a point you guys were talking about kind of like education in the wine industry and like the next generation and how critical that is. And that particular point was just hitting me. I was like, this is so, I couldn't agree with it more. I think it's really important on us. It's incumbent on us as people who've been in the industry in the Bay Area for more than 5 years, even if you were pre-COVID, you need to like step up now and help mentor the next generation.
Absolutely.
Because I think one of the biggest things that kind of isn't really being talked about enough in the wine industry right now is like, what is the pipeline of talent? Where did it come from historically? And I think it's always come from restaurants. Yeah. And I think we're like losing so many folks from restaurants and other industries for whatever reason. And I think we need to like help create pride in that level of work and make people want to be a part of it, and then capture those who are showing interest in wine to stay in wine. And then it's up to us to make that happen, but then to guide that journey. And that's going to help like this next wave. And I think that's just something COVID just was devastating in so many ways. And I think that's one of the symptoms, but I think it's now up to us to like figure out how to like remedy that in a more meaningful way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, the siloing effect that's happened, with the absorption of roles, right? You're now a manager, but the wine director, but floor manager. And also like, if you need to seat tables, you're seating tables, you're running food. Like the true Somm position doesn't really exist outside of, the 3 stars and the 2 stars in some cases. And, and even in those cases, you're still doing everything, right? The roles are just kind of disappearing, and everybody's working so hard. Everybody's so tired that they like are not going to community events. They're not going to like large format tastings, or they're going a lot less. And then when they go, they're kind of just like, shit, I got to work later. I'm going to get in and get out, you know? And it's a lot less of that like culture building, you know, where it's like, we all need to like really look out for each other and help each other learn, connect, and create those relationships and those dynamics, because that's the way that we move forward as a city, you know, speaking specifically for the San Francisco wine industry, that's how we move forward. And that's my hope, you know, my most selfish hope is that this podcast is going to be a reference point for people to find other people that they wouldn't normally find. You know, if I'm interested in South African wine, Chris just did an episode on South African wine. I'm going to listen to that. Yeah. They're going to find you. They're going to find your wine. That's what I hope. That's really the dream. Or, hey, that person's interested in what I'm in. What I'm interested in, and that's what I'm gonna talk to that person about. I'm gonna DM them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's my dream. Everybody's gonna love each other and be friends.
I don't think it's a selfish thing at all. I mean, I think it's a noble thing. I think it's like, I obviously I want my business to pay me so I can eventually make a living off of it, which is not the case yet. And yesterday's announcement definitely didn't make that easier. But I believe in it so much that I'm willing to take probably yet another year to hit profitability.
Right.
But I also look at it as like, this is so much more meaningful than like just me. Like, I think shedding the light on this place that like I've just become in love, like fallen in love with, is just like gets me up in the morning. Right. And it like makes me stoked. And like, I go have conversations. I mean, you know, in sales, it's hard. Like people are tough, and that's part of it, but like it keeps you going, right? And I just think like giving back, like if this podcast allows even one person to listen and get inspired and like go in the different direction, like, or follow the wine path, like it's fucking awesome. Yeah, keep that up.
That's
it.
Yeah, one thing. Yeah. Sometimes all it takes is that one thing that really hooks you and grabs you. And I mean, I remember tasting wine at 19 and going like, I don't fucking like this. I don't want to buy wine. This sucks, you know? And then I tasted a Chianti, and I was like, a Chianti Classico. And I was like, oh, I kind of like this, but I'll never like Pinot Noir. You know, I kind of like this. I'll never like Chardonnay. And now here I am, you know, I drink lots of Chard, lots of Pinot.
Yeah. Great wines.
But you know, it's, we need that. We need that hook. Let's go back to the tariff thing and just help me understand a little bit more, because I was having a conversation with somebody about it today and I didn't know how to answer the question. So I'd love if you feel comfortable sharing this information. You know, where's the tariff getting paid? Is the tariff getting paid when you purchase the wine? Is the tariff getting paid once it's in port? You know, where is that 30% kind of going into the cost, the initial cost from the winery, or cost once it's landed plus shipping? Like,
so basically from like a bigger picture, typical way an importer would work is you work with your wineries, you've been buying with them, I don't know, maybe between like 2 times a year to like every month or every other month. And you typically have terms on those invoices. So you may have terms where it is 90 days bill of lading, or 90 days post sale, or on delivery, whatever it is, whatever fits your business. But those are terms that you have with them. You also have to pay all the shipping fees, of course. And then in the case of tariffs, you pay it once it gets to port of entry. It gets into basically like a quarantine, and you have to pay it for it to get released from quarantine and clear customs. So my wine will be going to New York. So once it gets to New York, I'll have this very brief period to pay anywhere between $10,000 and $30,000 out of pocket with absolutely nothing in return. And that is a big reason why distributors and importers are scared shitless right now, because there are people who are moving far more volume than me, far higher value than me, that are going to be expected to pony up much more money than me just to get the wine here. So the stress becomes then like it kind of goes up and downstream. You go back to the supplier and you say, I need you to cut me better pricing and longer terms to be able to afford this. And then on my end, I'm going to have to raise prices to consumers to be able to afford, obviously, the increase in overall price. So all the way back down to the farmer, they may get paid much later by the winemaker if they're doing the negociant style, because they had to just give a huge discount of maybe even up to 15% to be able to get the wine to me here in the US, because theoretically the US is a very important market and they trust that the US is going to be good to them, right? And I think this is where things get so murky and sad, is like, when I went to South Africa with a business plan and a vision and met with these winemakers, there was so much trust in the US. It wasn't just like, hey, Peter, we like you, we like your style. It's like the US is a monster.
Yeah.
And we need to be there.
Yeah.
And actions that this jackass president is doing are eroding that trust that could potentially not be seen in our lifetime again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when these idiots are out of office, like I try to be like more diplomatic, but I just have so little respect for them. I actually have no respect. You lose so much faith in these other countries and in these producers, in these markets, in the consumers. If we want to export to there, who in Europe wants to buy our product right now? Come on, Canada, look at what happened, right?
Yeah.
So it's the erosion of trust and faith and desire to be in these places that's really one of the most intangibly terrible things that's happening. Mm-hmm. And so while like me and other importers are figuring out what the actual cost of all this is, it's going to smash the growers because they're going to inevitably be the one at the very end of the chain that gets hurt. It's going to, on the other end of the chain, it's going to raise prices to consumers. And that's the tax on people that tariffs always inevitably get. But the intangible side that's so damaging and incredibly long lasting is just the relationship abuse that we've given to other countries. And, I look at like Canada as like someone who fought with us in the world wars and has been on by our side the whole time. And now we're just like,
fuck you.
Piss off.
Yeah, when you're ready to be a state, let me know.
Like, come on. It's insane. Like I look at things like that and I'm just like, I have these like Instagram moments where I'm just like, I want to type in like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's not all of us.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that makes me so sad is like, we have absolutely taken for granted the power that we held as like just Americans coming to do business in another country and how much trust we had. And the like speed at which we have thrown that down the toilet is so sad. And I think once these people are out of office and we're like mending bridges, it's not going to be a quick process.
No. And the thing for me that like anybody thinks that the tariff is affecting the other countries, like in this case, it's affecting the farmers because it has to, because it's affecting you. And oh yeah, great. It'll encourage more domestic production. Yes, we should make more South African Chenin Blanc in America. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What the fuck kind of thing is that? You know what I mean? Like,
it's so backwards.
It's wild. It's so confusing to me.
Yeah. I think the thing is like I and good reputable importers are going to be able to negotiate something that works for both parties, meaning me and the suppliers. I only because I've treated my suppliers like we are very open to communication. We're always in communication where I treat them like, I mean, it's ridiculous because it's business, but it's like family. Because we're so open with each other and we've always treated each other with very deep mutual respect, we can get through this. There are importers who don't have that type of relationship with their suppliers, and maybe that's on them for not having that. And
hey, ship me a pallet when you get a chance. Thanks.
Yeah, they're going to be the ones where the supplier says like, I'm not going to bend over backwards for you.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm kind of curious of like where this all goes. But thank you. I've just been very with my producers in particular, I'm really like the level of gratitude towards them right now is like 200 out of 10. So it really comes down to like showing how much this is a relationship industry.
Yeah, it certainly is. Well, let's take a step back from our conversation about tariffs. And I like to call it a complaint sandwich. We started off happy, we went shitty, and we're gonna go happy again.
Go happy, yeah.
Let's talk about Hella Chenin and let's talk about what you guys are doing. You know, where the inspiration for it happened, and kind of the I don't know. I guess the reception that you've gotten, because it feels like this is the first one.
Yeah.
And you're getting a absurd turnout. I mean, there's everybody. Litterize there. There's Chenin Blanc is a unicorn wine.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's so many cool wines coming. So,
yeah. Dude, it's been such a it's been so heartwarming. I have goosebumps talking about this. It's one of the things that I've realized in starting Culture and certainly into getting Hella Chenin, but some of Culture is like the wine industry I think we're really stuck in a lot of doom loops right now, right? Like it's easy with social media to fall into it. And obviously with these tariffs in particular, it's very hard. But I think for me, like I want to create something that makes people want to be in wine, that makes people want to drink wine and be a part of it and engage with it. And I think that's one of the things we've been missing in a lot of ways is like create that space to build community, to bring people together and show people why wine is this badass, irreplaceable product. And it should be on every single damn table in every house in this country.
Yeah.
At every meal. Maybe not breakfast, but maybe so. Who knows?
Some places.
Yeah. And so I've had this vision for a while where I wanted to create this something that brought people together. And so Josh Hammerling and I were talking about it. I've known Josh since we were both in a diploma back in like 2016. And he was like, dude, Marty Winters and Alex Pitts from Maitre Duché would be like the perfect guys to bring in, which they absolutely were. And we had one meeting and we were like, oh, this is it. This is going to be sick.
Yeah.
And so we just were really, the four of us really bring like very different, definitely the square where we each bring very different pieces to the like structure. And we thought of the name. We immediately called Craig Harmeyer and we're like, okay, if we call this Hella Chenin, are you...
Got to get his blessing.
A, are you down? B, will you come pour?
Yeah.
Yes and yes.
Yeah.
Okay, this is on.
Yeah.
And I think it's shown a lot of things. I think there's a lot of Chenin Blanc grown here. It used to be like the most important grape in the States. And it's in acreage wise, not so much. Quality wise, I think it can still be considered one of the top and should be. And I hope that this event spurs some of that conversation. I think B, there's an appetite for community building events.
Absolutely.
And I think C, there's an appetite to drink wine, like just generally have some damn wine. And so it's been really fun to plan this. I mean, we have a 300 person goal. We're at like 220 tickets sold so far. We have Bernard from Signs of Sinai along with Tegan from Sandlands doing a panel discussion on Chenin Blanc, which is moderated by Alder Vinography from the Old Vine Registry. So I couldn't think of three people from these places that embody what growing, making, and preserving Chenin Blanc could stand for in these three. We have a trade tasting and a consumer tasting. So it's like, for me, the goal is let's have a space where people can come and have fun and drink wine and enjoy themselves. There's live music and food but on the other hand, how do we also make it into an event where like we get a lot of buyers there and they get an understanding of like how damn cool these two countries are for South Africa.
The largest ripple effect. Yeah.
And also like, help these winemakers from here, from South Africa, like break in. Because one thing that's been really interesting to me is whenever I go out to eat, obviously like I don't even like talk to my like partner for 5 minutes. I'm like scanning the wine list. But Chenin from South Africa, from California is usually a very, very small percentage of any, whereas Loire will be a big old chunk.
Yeah.
And I think that to me is the opportunity here. And so I hope that buyers and the trade will come. And, we've got like 100 coming, which is like on a Saturday afternoon is amazing. I hope that they'll say, okay, cool. Like this could absolutely be, we could make a more balanced approach to Chenin with Loire and California and South Africa. And that's what I want to see. I just want to see like the winemakers have more traction out of it. But for us, it's just like, I think this can be a bigger thing. We want it to be annual, run its course. I don't think it'll be indefinite, but there'll be a day where we retire it.
Sure.
But I think it'll grow. And the response from both the trade, the winemakers and the consumers that are coming is like unbelievable.
Yeah. It's exciting. I mean, in one of your guys' posts, you commented, you kind of compared it to Blood of God and Blood of Gods. And I was like, it's so true because it's niche, but it's not unapproachable niche. Right. And also it's like come as you are kind of thing. Right. And I thought that was so cool. And who's in the industry that doesn't love Chenin Blanc? Who's in the industry that doesn't love Riesling? Who's in the industry that doesn't love Syrah, right? Like these are all things that we all really love that don't get enough play and don't get enough attention because, there's a little bit of that like wall that we have to break through when selling to the consumer. You're at the table, your table side, and somebody goes, hey, I'm thinking of a bottle of Chenin Blanc. You're not going to go like, well, let me tell you about this Cabernet Riesling that we have, right? or inversely, you know, they want a bottle of domestic wine and they don't really want to try something from outside that realm. But yeah, as soon as I saw Hella Chenin announced, I was like, this is awesome. Whatever it is, whenever it is, I'm going.
Yeah,
and you know, I might be pouring at one of the tables now.
Oh, sweet. All
yeah,
right, I love that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great wineries that are going to be there that I've had and tried and sold, and I'm just excited. It's like Trebicari, right? Like I go to Trebicari every year. I don't go because I walk and taste every wine at every table. I go because I get to see a bunch of people that I only see once a year. I get to see the producers. I get to meet up with everybody, say hi to everybody. And it's very much like a culture building scenario.
Yeah.
And I just think it's great that you guys are willing to put in I'm sure this is an immense amount of work to organize and to orchestrate. So.
Well, yeah, it's crazy for sure. And just another layer of complexity with the tariffs, because I'm, you know, obviously bringing two of my winemakers are flying over for it. Yeah. And a lot of their wine is on a boat, the one that I'm trying to get out.
Yeah.
So basically for me, the concept of like, there's no option but to pay tariffs is very real because of Hella Chenin. And I'd happily pay to be able to get this thing, make sure it happens.
Yeah.
But that's like how deeply badly I want this to happen. We were me and the guys were doing like a photo shoot, which was funny because we're all very awkward on camera. So it was just a lot of the photos are us being very awkward. Haven't really made it out into the world yet.
Sure.
We're not really quite sure how to slice those out, but we brought a bunch of bottles from you know, Maitre de Chez, Hammerling, Scions, Sinai, Luddite, Foxen, Sandlands, and we ended up opening a bunch just to kind of like have for pictures, but more so to like see. And we were like, this is going to be so fun.
Yeah.
Because this grape variety is seriously diverse. And like having, you know, Hammerlings from Chalone, Maitre de Chez, Sandlands, mine, like 4 different super different styles open was like, oh my God, this is going to be, even as a consumer who's just like coming to drink and have fun, they're going to be able to say like, whoa, these are way different. These are the same grape. Like, how is this possible? And I think that like, it really hit us how much potential this event has to just be like a complete eye opener for what the grape is, which is like the whole goal.
Yeah. I don't, you know, when's the last time somebody else, I mean, obviously for you, but you know, when's the last time somebody got together with friends and opened a bunch of different Chenin Blanc, right? We did it 2 years ago. We had Thanksgiving with a bunch of our friends and we just did a Loire Valley theme. And there was, you know, 3 or 4 Chenin Blanc there and we were like, great, but it was all Loire, right? And we weren't bringing in other things from different areas, but yeah, it's pretty exciting. I'm very much looking forward to it, and there's, you know, some great people there. So
I'm stoked you're coming. I'm glad you're gonna be working. We're gonna be doing a run.
I mean, we'll see what
t-shirts.
Adi says. You know, if I'm pretty sure he's going to be there. I think I saw the announcement today that you guys said he was officially going to be here.
He's not officially going to be there yet. I'm like literally doing everything I can to like bother the shit out of him.
I think he's going to be in the U.S.
Good.
So I'm pretty sure that he'll be around without committing for him. You know, a lot of these guys are farmers, as you know, and they're not quite as...
Adi in particular, when you meet him, you'll see. I remember I was at he does a pizza party at his winery on Thursdays that is absolutely fucking epic.
Yeah.
And I stayed the night at his winery for a couple days in January, and I made it to the pizza party. Oh my God, I was a shell of myself the next day, but like, man, I was trying to like keep him in a space for 30 seconds to be like, Adi, I'm not leaving until you say yes that you're coming to this. And he was like, just buzzing around, like dancing. I mean, he is like such a funny dude, and like if he comes, he'll be the absolute life of the party. So yeah, we got to keep the pressure on him to make him to come. So Adi, if you're listening, get your ass over here.
We're gonna tag him. We'll tag him. I don't know if he checks his Instagram, but whatever. We'll tag him anyways. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think that we touched on, you know, effectively everything that I wanted to touch on. What do you think of the wine?
It's delicious. I think I have a guess of what variety it is.
Okay.
But it's just delicious. I like.
And I always say you don't have to, it's not about blinding it. It's more about just kind of enjoying something while we talk. sometimes the wines are blindable, sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
More often than not, I pick it for a reason, you know? So if you want to take a stab or you want to describe it or whatever.
It tastes like Loire Chenin to me.
Yeah.
There's like up front, it's very fruit forward. Like not fruit forward is maybe not over generous way to describe it, because there's like a lot of the appley pear orchard fruit, but there's like this hit where it shifts into savory.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because it's like it goes schisty, woolly, little chalky, texturally, and then it's like lees, and then it's like very like like my upper gums are like coated in that fuzzy, leesy thing, which I love. But the acidity is just relentless.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very Chenin-y to me.
So much acid.
Yeah.
There was 2 wines. The other one is over there in the bag. It's Skepnes, and I was going to pour the 23 Mendo for you.
Love that guy.
But I decided to pull this out of the cellar. I've had this for a few years, and I was really excited to show it because I figured who else to share South African wine with that I love.
Hey, Aslina Shard.
And one of my favorite people that I've met in the wine industry since I started was Nsiki Biala.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately I worked in an Italian restaurant when I met her and I couldn't sell the wine, but I've always had a soft spot in my heart for her wines specifically, especially when she was doing the Stella Kaya wines. And this wine is so cool. It's 21 and it's so good, bright and vibrant.
Damn.
Yeah.
The acidity is so much higher than I
it's so there. And it's been in the back of my fridge since the last time she was here. 2 years ago, she did an event at Malay, and I went and grabbed a bottle and met Angel and the team over there. And I thought, oh, wait, and in a couple of years, I'm going to share it with her. But since she's coming to Hella Chenin,
that's so cool.
Get to give her a hard time.
Thanks for opening, dude.
Yeah, of course. And that brings me back to this other sticker that I wanted to talk to you about because I left it in the bag so I wouldn't forget it. Is this also, it seems like it's a regulated sticker, but...
Yeah, this is a really good one. So this is the Integrity and Sustainability seal by the Wine and Spirits Board.
Okay.
So this is very legit. This is certifying not just the farming practices, but the labor practices, even water management practices.
Awesome.
So for example, if you have a poor wastewater management or like a water recirculation management, you won't get the sustainability seal. I think the most important element of it is sustainability of your labor practices. So there's definitely, obviously South Africa has a history of very bad labor practices in vineyards during the apartheid era, in particular like the DOP system, which is where farmers were paid in liquor, not even in actual money, which created dependency on the work.
Of course, yeah.
It's just a horrifically bad thing. And so stuff like this is created to try to actually have accountability and oversight. So to get this, you have to get recertified quite regularly in the form of an audit. So they'll actually come to the winery and there have been people who have lost it.
Yeah.
So you have to pay your staff well. You have to have record of all of this. And I think to me that's a very legit seal. So, I mean, the Van Hunks has it, for example.
Yeah.
He farms in the same way, but the little guys, all this stuff costs money.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah,
so it's a matter of like, will you,
it's like organics and biodynamics. It's like you can farm it, but to get certified costs a lot, or there's a lot of hoops to jump through, right?
Yeah. Bernard is it's funny. So I was in South Africa in January, and I hired a videographer to put together producer videos for each of my winemakers, but also to create a trailer. So my goal is to put out a documentary on South African wine eventually. And this trailer, I hope, will be like the way that I can fundraise to actually do this full length thing. And I was hitting up Bernard like relentlessly, like, please let me, I need to film you. Like you're like a cornerstone of my book, and everything that you do is like, I am so much respect and admiration for him. And he's like, no, no, because I have my team here, and like I can't keep them here late. I can't, like, I'm gonna like take good care of them. Yeah. And although you're here on the other side of the world and only have a day to film with me, they're who's getting precedence in this in the midst of crush.
Right.
And so it was like, it just kind of goes to show like the meaning of like caring for your team. And so although he doesn't have that specific label, it's in his ethos as well. But yeah, that's a very meaningful thing. Whenever you see a bottle with that, it's not like greenwashing. It's very legit.
We'll see I don't know if we'll be able to see it on the camera. Whatever. It's a vertical sticker. It says integrity and sustainability, which to me, I was like, integrity and stability, sustainability certified, which to
Yeah.
me, I was like, well, if it's certified and it's integrity, that's awesome. That's
It's a real
good sign.
thing.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. There's another sticker if you want to keep going.
Yeah, I
on the
was going to
sticker
see
route.
there's this one here.
Every single export has to have this. That's Sawis. It's like the TTB of South Africa.
I see.
Basically, you can put these numbers into their wine and spirits board website, and it tells you when the grapes are harvested, exactly what
Wow.
vineyards. Very, very serious.
That's
so
awesome.
they're on one end, the winemakers are like, this is like laborious annual process.
Yeah.
On the other, there's no industry more transparent in the sourcing of grapes than
Right.
South Africa
Yeah.
by
Yeah,
a million miles.
Yeah.
Every single bottle exported has this.
That's so cool.
So it's actually, the stickers are meaningful. I think we've been trained and conditioned to think greenwashing because there is so much of it out there. But the certified heritage, the wine and spirits board, the sustainability seals, those are all genuinely meaningful things.
And this, I think this is super cool because, we had Dan Petrosky on earlier in the season, and, he was talking about forming a blockchain around a specific vineyard. And when people bought the wine, they would get access to the blockchain so they could see, when it was harvested, how much rain there was. And they were like documenting so much. And I thought that's so cool, but it's so like not sustainable for so many vineyard sites. And so the idea that you can do something like this is just really cool. I mean, Be a Cart added, the My Origin thing to their bottle, and it was showing like disgorgement windows and things like that. I think people want more transparency, and to know that like everything in South Africa has this sticker and you're able to search where it came from, what vineyards. I think that's fascinating.
It's super legit. It's like there's so much to talk about with South Africa. I rarely even mention this in like sales meetings, for example. But yeah, they're like, I think that there's so much in the farming element and the winemaking element that's like aimed at making things better. By no means are they there yet. But I think Nziki is like such a great example of like someone who's come up and like forged this incredible path. I think the wine arc where she's making wine, I believe she's still making wine there, is like one of the most incredibly inspirational places in the world. Like 13 black owned brands in this place now. And it was partially funded through an initiative to try to help bring more diversity into the wine industry. There's 2 winemakers I've worked with that are in the Protege program, which is like a 3-year internship sponsored by the Cape Winemakers Guild.
so cool.
That is only for people of color. And it's meant only for post grads of Stellenbosch University. Like 3 to 5 of them a year. It's very small, very selective, but you get 3 years at 3 different wineries. And I worked with Kiara Scott Farmer, who was 26 when she finished her internship, became the youngest head female winemaker in the country at Brookdale, and then just last year won Winemaker of the Year. It was the first person of color to win it. Wow. And all of it kind of started with she's an absolute firecracker and she's incredibly talented, but this program helped get her into all these different places and get the experience. And one of my dreams is to be able to work with that program and get a year where they come here in California.
That'd be awesome.
And I want to like help facilitate that.
Oh yeah.
And so I know enough winemakers here would be so down to have an intern from South Africa.
Yeah.
And so I want to like, that's my next kind of, once we get through all this tariff nonsense, figure out how to like create some really beautiful like synergy between the 2 countries and get more young winemakers here in this path.
And I think that for the young winemakers, having the kind of at Chambers, I always called it the spider web effect. It was like all the brands are connected somehow. How are they connected, right? And you would look, oh, this person worked there. That's why, right? And so having that, a lot of people, not only does it offer perspective, not only does it offer like incredible expertise and access to knowledge that you wouldn't have gotten by reading a book or watching YouTube or something, it also allows you the ability to kind of like reference those brands and be able to use that reference as a way to also kind of like promote your brand, right? I'm a new young brand. Oh, I haven't heard of you. Well, I worked here, I interned here, and you're like, oh shit, that's legit, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it gives them a fighting chance in a highly competitive marketplace,
Totally. Yeah, it's a special thing. I mean, I'm definitely seeing that with South Africa. Like, it's a very small community. It's a very supportive community. And I have winemakers that are now like, hey, I see you work with this guy. They've spoken really highly of you. We'd love to connect. And like, that means a ton to me when that happens, even though like 99% I can't work with because it's very easy to grow too fast in this industry. Yeah. Very easy to gloat a portfolio, and that's like the demise of many great books. So it's a very slow and steady approach, but when I have that kind of outreach, it means a lot because it feels like, okay, you're on the right path, but it shows you the way people talk. And again, it's a relationship industry, man. It's all about, treating people the right way and doing things the right way. And that goes quite a length. I can't believe, man, that Chardonnay is so good.
I'm just offering you
Please.
I'm just pouring you Chenin and over the Chard, but
don't ever not pour me Chenin.
I figure we could in a few minutes we'll cheers on the way out Hella Chenin instead of just like a normal cheers.
Hella Chard.
Hella Chard. So I guess we'll wrap. Do you have words of wisdom? Do you have any statements? Do you have any kind of like advice that you want to just get out there and say before we wrap to listeners?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I feel like we've covered a lot of like really important pieces for me and like how I view the industry and obviously tariffs. I think as a wine industry, a big thing for me is like trying to create spaces where consumers can come and just drink and enjoy wine and feel comfortable in the not knowing or the knowing or whatever it is that makes them comfortable. And I think like right now, especially with yesterday's tariff announcements, it's quite possibly like not hyperbole to say it's more important than ever to create those spaces. And so I hope that as an industry, we can figure out how to like, I know people need to create niches about like really natty wine bars or 0.0, whatever. Create spaces that are a little bit less dogmatic so we can get more people in and create those on-ramps. Yep. I think that's such an important thing. And then I think like with that comes try South African. Yeah. I think like for me, it's such an incredibly, like, I really personally believe there's no more exciting region right now than South Africa. Sure. I think the growth has been so exponential in such a short amount of time that the lion's share of meetings I have with buyers and sommeliers, the first meeting is like, whoa, this is really like, this is as good as you say it is. Yeah. Like, this is better than I thought it was going to be. I think the majority of those who I meet with are really coming at it from like, teach me the like 5-year-old level so I can start building. Mm-hmm. So it shows me like there's just so much room for education, which I love. Like my whole thing is to bring education into it. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to explore and to give it a shot. Mm-hmm. I think in the end, it needs someone, a buyer or like a person on the retail floor or running the program to say like, hey, Chris, like, I know you like this textural lazy shards. Let's get you into the South African Chenin, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to take that for a little while. Yeah. But that is like what the job is of a wine professional. Yep. So if you're not willing to walk someone through that and make those recommendations, that's a whole nother story. But I think if you have a program where that is your whole ethos, there's not a place more exciting than South Africa from my point of view, because you're just constantly turning light bulbs on.
Well, and to echo back to the stickers and the sustainability practices and all of those things, there's nowhere else that's documenting things like that. You see a DOCG sticker and you automatically assume quality. I mean, this thing has 2 stickers, that one has a sticker, like, but the point is that, there's a lot of work that's being done on the governmental level that I think is not necessarily being done in most other maybe any other country. So.
No, man. No, they're really, I think the heart is in the right place. And I think part of that is because the industry has obviously a dark past, but they still actually, interestingly, aren't getting a lot of government support. There's no subsidies like in the EU. There's access to capital is a whole nother can of worms that's very challenging. So young winemakers are really left in a lot of ways to fend for themselves.
I see.
And so the ability to say, okay, I'm going to like let this barrel go because like that's my ethos. That doesn't exist because you cannot risk some type of spoilage yeast or bacteria coming in because it's your livelihood. Yeah. So I think that you can still farm the right way, buy fruit from the right farms that are farming the right way, but make wine in a minimal intervention style that it's truly minimal intervention, but is smart in 21st century and like ensuring there's not spoilage yeasts and things that are like making the experience very inconsistent. I think that's a critical thing to me that I personally love, because I think that you need to take control of your destiny in some ways. You can't just like let things go to the gods. And I find that in South African wine as well. And I think that that's come from the need to just to control your fate in a way there. And I think that really attracts me to the winemakers a lot.
Anything else? Any
Thank
last
you, man.
words?
No, I appreciate it. It's been
Fuck
really
the
fun.
tariffs.
Fuck the
Let's
tariffs.
let's keep going. Let's fight the good fight. Let's champion these amazing families, and the wines are awesome, and thanks for sharing. So.
Yeah, dude. Thank you. I think, we'll get through this together. I think the industry has been heading in the direction of needing more community and more like communal approach and like come togetherness. This may be an inflection point and a catalyst for that in an even more meaningful way. So yeah, let's keep doing that.
I hope so.
Yeah.
See you at Hella Chenin.
See you, Hella Chenin, dude. Thank you.
Cheers.